My name is Vanessa, and my life used to be simple. I had a steady job as an office clerk, a routine that I followed without much thought. I had a small family, just my mother, my younger sister Michelle, and my father. But everything changed when my father passed away. The grief I felt was beyond anything I had ever known. Losing him left me with a gaping hole in my heart. He had been my guide, my protector, and the one I always turned to for advice. His death wasn't just the loss of a father. It felt like losing a part of myself. My father was always a quiet, gentle man. He never demanded attention but was always there for us when we needed him. I have so many memories of him, especially when I was younger. We would work in the garden together every Sunday, tending to the flowers. I remember how he always lifted me up when I fell during school sports day. He never let me stay down. He was my strength, and he made sure I knew I was loved and supported. It was in those moments I felt safest, knowing he would always catch me, no matter how many times I fell. The days following his death were a blur. It felt like the world around me had stopped. My father had been ill for quite some time, spending the last months of his life in the hospital. I visited him almost every day, watching him grow weaker. But despite his frailty, he always smiled when he saw me, trying to comfort me as if he wasn't the one in pain. He was more concerned about how I was doing than his own condition. My mother, too, did her best to stay strong. She never showed us how much she was suffering, even though I knew she was in as much pain as I was. After his funeral, everything felt different. The house seemed emptier, and my father's absence was like a heavy weight on my chest. It was hard to return to normal life. My sister Michelle, though, seemed unaffected. She went through the motions of the funeral, but I could tell she wasn't feeling the same loss. Michelle had always been unpredictable. As a child, she often got into trouble, causing our parents endless worry. But despite everything, our father never gave up on her. When she married a man who worked at a bank, she moved away, and we saw less of her. Her visits became rare, and it seemed like she was more distant than ever. The will reading was the first time in weeks that I had seen the whole family together. I wasn't sure what to expect. My mother and Michelle sat beside me, and a lawyer stood at the head of the table. The air was thick with tension. My father had been sick for a long time, so we all expected the will to address his final wishes. But as the lawyer began reading, I felt a strange mixture of anticipation and unease. The lawyer first revealed that my mother would inherit the house and land, which was expected. She nodded quietly, accepting the news without comment. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something more would be revealed. Then came Michelle's inheritance. The lawyer announced that she would receive $130,000 in cash. Michelle barely reacted, simply saying, "As expected." Dad always knew how to take care of me. I was taken aback by her coldness. There was no sadness in her voice, no acknowledgement of the loss we had all just experienced. It was as if the money was all that mattered to her. I felt a knot form in my stomach. Was I wrong to think that the inheritance would somehow reflect our father's love for each of us? Was the bond between Michelle and our father so fragile that it meant nothing now? When the lawyer turned to me, I braced myself for the announcement. What had my father left me? What would I receive as a final gift from the man I had always been closest to? But the words that came next shocked me. Vanessa will receive a cassette player. A cassette player? My mind raced as I tried to process it. Why would my father leave me such an old, seemingly insignificant object? I looked around the room, stunned, as the lawyer continued to explain that this was my father's clear intention. I asked him if there had been a mistake, but he insisted that this was what my father had chosen for me. Michelle burst out laughing when she heard about my inheritance. "A cassette player? What am I supposed to do with that?" she mocked. Her laughter stung deeply. I couldn't understand why my father had chosen to leave me something so odd, something that didn't hold any apparent value. I had expected something meaningful, something that would remind me of the love we shared. Instead, I felt like I had been given a piece of junk. Michelle's words only made it worse, as if she were confirming that I wasn't worthy of anything more. It felt like a slap in the face. My mother, sensing my distress, tried to comfort me. "Vanessa, your father must have had his reasons for leaving you the cassette player," she said gently. But her words didn't help. If my father had reasons, why hadn't he told me? Why hadn't he explained himself? It was so unlike him to leave something so cryptic without any explanation. I couldn't let go of the nagging feeling that there was something more to this cassette player than met the eye. My father had always been thoughtful, always knew what to do. Why would he leave me something so meaningless? That night, I sat alone in my room, staring at the cassette player. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Why had my father chosen this for me? What was the message hidden in this object? I decided to try and see if it still worked, even though it seemed hopeless. I pressed the power button and waited. Nothing happened. I felt a wave of disappointment wash over me. It seemed like just an old, broken machine. But then a strange thought crossed my mind. Maybe this was part of the mystery. Maybe there was something hidden in it, something that would only make sense later. I couldn't bring myself to throw the cassette player away. It was my father's last gift to me, no matter how strange it seemed. I took it to a repair shop the next day. The clerk told me that it was quite old, but they could try to fix it. I left the shop, feeling a mixture of hope and confusion. Could this old, broken object really hold a secret from my father? Was there something important hidden in it, waiting for me to uncover? I had to know. I had to find out what my father had meant by leaving it to me. The days dragged on, and I found myself thinking about my father more and more. I missed him terribly. His absence left an emptiness that nothing could fill. I spent my time going through his old belongings, hoping to find something that might explain the cassette player. But all I found were his old books, photos, and letters. Nothing seemed to make sense. I even checked the house for anything that might give me a clue. But there was nothing. Nothing that connected to the cassette player in any way. It was like the mystery was deepening, not clearing up. Then, one afternoon, I was going through one of my father's old boxes when I found something that made my heart stop. It was a cassette tape, and it had my father's handwriting on it. The label read, "To Vanessa." I felt my hands shake as I picked it up. This was it. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The cassette player had to work now. I immediately called the repair shop. They told me the player was ready and I rushed to pick it up. My heart raced as I drove home. What could be on this tape? What was my father trying to tell me? When I got home, I inserted the tape into the cassette player and pressed play. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, slowly, my father's voice filled the room. Hearing his voice again was like a balm to my aching heart. "Vanessa, if you are listening to this, I am no longer in this world," he said, his voice calm and comforting. "I have left something very important for you. It is in the storage shed. You need to find it." My heart pounded in my chest. What could it be? What had my father hidden for me? I had to find out. The next day I began searching the house. I checked every room, every closet, and every drawer. I even went into the basement, but I found nothing. The storage shed where my father had said the item would be was my last hope. I searched every inch of it, but all I found were old tools and boxes. Just when I thought I had reached a dead end, I noticed a small, locked safe hidden behind a stack of boxes. My heart skipped a beat. This had to be it. I quickly grabbed the key from my father's desk, unlocked the safe, and opened it. Inside were several antique watches. I was stunned. These watches were beautiful, worth more than I could ever have imagined. I had them appraised, and the total value was over $500,000. I couldn't believe it. My father had left me something truly valuable, something far beyond the cassette player I had once dismissed. It was then that I realized my father's true gift. He had left me something that represented not just wealth, but something deeper. His love, his care, and the lessons he had imparted to me. But little did I know, this discovery was only the beginning of a much darker journey.